kind of thing do you?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the April 6, 2016 of the Frederick County Planning Commission. Would you join us in a moment of silence, please? Thank you. There are no changes to the agenda.
Move for adoption.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We have got a set of minutes from March the 2nd.
Move for approval.
Second?
In favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We have committee reports, and I'm going to ask Mr. Kenny if he will report for Mr. Oates.
I will do the best I can here. I filled in for Gary on Monday, and I apologize, I didn't bring that agenda with me.
It's okay.
But, and Mr. Bishop might be able to help me a little bit here on this one. But they had a full, like 4 items they had on there. One that they kind of passed on to the next meeting was the comprehensive plan, transportation update, section update. But they did have the House Bill 2 application program, and he explained to us very thoroughly and how he keeps up track of it. I'm not sure, but how he does a fantastic job with that, on how that application process works for prioritizing the roads and systems in the county. The MPO work program, that we had the Winfred portion of it, and I'm kind of glancing through here, that's the Metropolitan Plan Organizational Plan. He explained that. Then we also talked about some of the updates to the exit 310 to 522. There was a Route 37 there, Route 277, exit 307 and Double Church Road. And very informative, and it was a good meeting. And sorry I didn't have a more informed.
Oh, listen, good job. And thank you for doing that for Mr. Oates. Okay, I think next is Mr. Blaine Dunn from the Board of Supervisors.
The Board of Supervisors approved a 12-month Trumpet Vine Farm outdoor festival permit at the last board meeting.
Okay, thank you. All righty, let's see here. This is the spot on the agenda where we open it up for citizen comments for anything that is not on the agenda. Anyone want to speak to us about anything? Well, seeing none, we will close the citizen comment portion. Our next item is an action item for us. It's
Madam Chairman, I'll need to recuse myself.
Yes, sir. Rezoning 02-16 for I-81 West Business Park, submitted by Gray Wolf, Inc. to rezone 36.676 acres from the RA Rural Areas District to the B2 Business General District, 45.453 acres from the RA Rural Areas District to the B3 Industrial Transition District, and 73.36 acres from the Rural Areas District to M1 Light Industrial District with proffers. The properties are located on the west side of Interstate 81 between Cedar Hill Road, Route 671, and Hopewell Road, Route 672 in the Stonewall Magisterial District, and are identified by property identification numbers 33A-113, 33A-124, and 33A-114B. It says Mrs. Perkins. Okay,
But I'm here.
thank you. We're glad for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. We opted to mix it up a little bit because really the only issues that arose at your last meeting, as you'll recall, were transportation focused, and as such, the updates are transportation focused as well. So with that, we are talking about I-81 West Business Park, encompasses a total of about 155 acres. And if I can roll us right into where we were last time. This is the GDP that was brought forth last time with the application. As you can see, it offers the central roadway. You may recall, it also offered signalization of the ramps, as well as Hopewell Road at Route 11. And it was offering limited right-of-way along 81 there. You see those little slivers. Some of the concerns we had at that time were we were looking for more flexibility with regard to the signalization proffers to allow for potential conversions to cash should a likely and worthy project come up, that we would want that flexibility. We had issues with the fact that they were proffering a 60-foot right-of-way for what is a comprehensively planned major collector road. And we had issues with the fact that your Eastern Road Plan, if I can pull it up here, shows frontage roads through that property to a future split interchange that was not addressed. So the applicant has updated their proffers since that time, something that looks more like this. Now, it doesn't look terribly different with the exception of the additional ramp lines that you'll see shown through the 2 land bays that are closest to the interstate. Those are meant to address the split interchange. We have a little bit of an issue as they try to address that, so they have proposed this. Now, does it match what's in our Eastern Road Plan? No, it doesn't, but they have made an attempt to address that. The big concern here is we've got a bit of a hole in the middle of the donut, which I've zoomed in a little bit, the Open Door Church. You have a significant structure there in the form of that cross along I-81, and of course, they have been developing a cemetery on that property as well. So we do have some issues there. It is difficult to say whether this proposed configuration will be an acceptable one to VDOT or federal highways. But it should be noted that the past configuration was never taken also through a full federal highway approval either, which you can't get without a full design anyway. It was vetted in terms of conceptually, but that's as far as it ever went. In addition, they have increased the right-of-way to allow for their main central roadway, Alfalfa Lane, to now allow for a major collector road. They are still constructing 2 lanes of it. However, the right-of-way provided will allow for that future 4-lane roadway. And I believe I already mentioned, but in case I didn't, they have allowed for that conversion to a cash proffer for those signals should that become needed. Now, in response to the updated proffers, which part of the issue that came up at the last Planning Commission meeting is we pointed out what those concerns were, and draft proffers were already at that time starting to be circulated, but had not yet been able to be provided to you, the Planning Commission, so of course you had concern with that. Well, those proffers are now what you have in front of you that are addressing the items that I'm discussing this evening. In addition, we do have an updated VDOT comment. Shorter than before, still somewhat verbose. It's only 4 bullet points, but it's dated March 29th, and it should be in your packet. So if I can move on to the key points of that, you will see the first is still the accommodation of the split ramp interchange. As I've noted earlier, the applicant has provided a scenario that they feel they can best try to address what the shortcoming was. The fact is, we're not going to know until we get much further down the road whether it will do the job or not. But frankly, we have that issue with what we already have on our plans. So definitely give them points for making an attempt there. VDOT has requested that a signal warrant analysis be included in the proffer. That's not currently in there. Basically, at such time as they have hit their traffic number, that 6,000 plus trips that's within their proffers, VDOT would be requesting that they go ahead and do a signal warrant analysis to see if they've been tripped to trigger that pro rata share. And finally, VDOT has requested turn lane improvements associated with the new road construction, and also a clarification to the proffer that Alfalfa Lane would be constructed prior to a CO of any of the properties, which I'm going to let the applicant address those concerns, but my understanding is those are not big issues for them. Now, that third bullet, I'll note, I wasn't terribly concerned about it myself, frankly, because anybody who's been through VDOT's design process knows they're not going to approve a new connection that doesn't have proper turn lanes and stuff like that. However, if they're more comfortable having it clearly defined that they'll provide those things, I believe that's fine with the applicant. Like I said, I'll let them speak to that, and certainly it's fine with me. But that was why we didn't really point that out, because that's really a standard part of the process. So that's where we were. That's where we are. I can take any questions you have. Hopefully I haven't been too confusing in how I laid that out. And of course, we have Mr. Tim Stowe here representing the application this evening.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Bishop? Questions? Yes.
Yes, sir.
How much farther is the, when you do a signal warrant analysis, they're going to have to do some kind of a TIA to come up with the 6,330 trips per day? I mean, unless they kind of just have somebody sit at the gate and count cars. But how much further of a step is it to go to get the signal warrant analysis past that TIA to say whether you're at 6,330 or not?
It's not really the 6,600 trips that trips the signal. The warrant analysis looks at a number of specific factors. If VDOT runs one, it costs about $3,000. They'd rather these guys did it. So that's about the only thing there. How would we determine is as they're developing their development there, because they are capped at that amount of trips, we would be using ITE trip generation as they proposed each new use, and we would use that to determine where they were at.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions from down here? Well, we are, this is called an action item, and
Yes, ma'am, you have held the public hearing.
held a public hearing, so it's up to us, folks, at this time.
And Mr. Stowe is here as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Mr. Stowe, come on up, I know you want to. Pardon me, sir.
Good evening. I'm available to answer any questions you may have as well, but I think Mr. Bishop did a wonderful job of covering the items. I would add, if I can further address your question, the signal warrant analysis is a whole separate process from the TIA. It's based on detailed traffic counts that are collected hourly over usually a 12 to 16-hour period of time. And you go through each of the warrants individually and see if they're triggered or not. And if you satisfy two or more of them, then there's sometimes an opportunity to put a signal in, but not always. So the name of the whole process is a little bit misleading.
Okay, thank you.
It's usually associated with design, though, as the turn lanes, as Mr. Bishop mentioned, they're usually part of the design process when a signal goes in.
Anyone else? A question of Mr. Stowe?
Thank you.
Thank
We
you, sir.
respectfully request your favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Well, we are now at the point where we need to take action. Comments? Yes, Mr. Unger.
Just listening to John talk, it sounds like VDOT doesn't have a problem with anything now, so I really don't have a problem with it at all.
Madam Chair, I have to agree. As Mr. Bishop said, it's hard to have at this point in the planning, have a transportation crystal ball, if you will. However, I do feel that they have addressed the transportation proffers as best they could to minimize transportation impact.
Any other comment? Yes, sir.
Chair, I'd agree. I'm comfortable with what the applicant has put forward and think they've, obviously addressed the proffer concerns that were raised previously and seem to have addressed a lot of the key transportation issues, certainly the ones that I had concerns about. And I think some of the lingering VDOT comments are things that can be taken care of as at subsequent stages of the design and review process. So I'm very much comfortable with this.
Anyone else? Well, this is Stonewall District.
Is it a public hearing?
No, we already did that. Excuse me.
Madam Chair, I believe this rezoning application is consistent with the land use designation comprehensive plan. Commercial industrial use, I believe, is in the best interest of Frederick County. Accompanying proffers, I believe, at this point in planning, minimize the impact. But more importantly, one proffer that stuck out with me was this property is in a karst fracture area. There are a number of potential well sites both on this property and in the surrounding property, and they have proffered a significant area for a water storage tank that could be up to 4 million gallons. Therefore, I would like to make a motion that we approve the rezoning of 02-16 for I-81 West Business Park.
Second.
Arnie, Mr. Moan?
Moan, yes.
Triplett, yes.
Kenny, yes.
Molden, yes.
Thomas, yes.
Scott, yes.
Manuel, yes.
Ambrosi, yes.
Unger, yes.
And the chair votes yes. So let's see, this goes to the Board of Supervisors, I think, on
7th.
the 27th. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Okay, our next item is a discussion item for us. It's the dedication of public utilities and right-of-way on rural preservation lots. Mrs. Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the commission. Staff has received a request to revise the zoning ordinance to provide for an allowance to permit divisions from rural preservation lots for public road dedications or utility dedications. Currently, the zoning ordinance prohibits all future divisions from rural preservation tracts unless the division adds to the acreage amount. So the minor revision before you tonight just really adds those two caveats. For the future division would only be allowed for the expansion of existing VDOT roads and also for dedication of public utilities. So those are the only two allowances that would be added in. So the DRC discussed this amendment at their February meeting. They agreed with the proposed changes and sent it forward to the commission for discussion. So tonight we are seeking your comments to forward to the board. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions, comments? Mr. Thomas.
Candace, I was curious, why would we eliminate new roads from consideration in this?
Really, a lot of your rural preservation tracts are out. Obviously, in the rural areas, there are no planned roads typically within these. So we don't want to see an allowance for someone that was, say, landlocked behind them to then dedicate a new road through a rural preservation tract to get additional density while kind of circumventing the intent of the ordinance to preserve that rural preservation tract. So that's why we limit it to existing roads.
Is there an allowance that, if the situation occurred that we ended up with on the 37 extension tract, if there was a rural preservation lot in there, could we do an exception at that point? I guess we always could do an exception.
It would, I think in that case, would have to be probably a future ordinance amendment, but at this time it's not in there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions about this? Things you'd like to pass on to the board?
I'll just throw out the reason that was brought forward is the item we just had before this one. The water storage tank was being put in the proffers as an easement. And the reason for that was where it's being put up at, it's a rural preservation tract, and the applicant could not proffer that tract of property to the sanitation authority. So once this is adopted, they would be able to transfer ownership over, not just leave an easement.
Okay. I think that's it. Now, our next one is also a discussion item. It's a request to include outdoor flea markets as a conditional use permit in the B2 and B3 districts. Mrs. Perkins.
Again, thank you.
Chair, I'll have to recuse from this discussion.
Sir, thank you.
This is a citizen requested ordinance amendment to, as you state, allow outdoor flea markets as a conditional use in the B2, which is your business general, and your B3 industrial transition district. Now, currently, flea markets operated outdoors are permitted as a conditional use in the RA, which is your rural areas district, through a conditional use which was added back into the ordinance back in 2010. Now, I would note that flea markets operated indoors are permitted in the B2 district currently. Now, the request is to allow outdoor flea markets as a conditional use in the B2 and the B3 districts Also included with the amendment are some modified supplementary use regulations that were adopted as part of the 2010 amendment for the RA district. They've been modified slightly to incorporate the B2, B3 district conditional use permit. Now, I would note that the DRC discussed this at their February meeting. The committee expressed a number of concerns related to this proposed use, and I'll just really run through some of the main points that they discussed. First, there was concern about how this would fit in with existing B2 and B3 districts, concerns about the reduced standards for parking and drive aisles. With the RA amendment from a few years back, it was reduced to gravel. As you know, typically in your B2, B3 districts, you have paving standards. There was also concern about the impact to commercial uses that could be adjacent to a proposed use, and really that the use is currently allowed with a conditional use permit in the RA district. So they were concerned about really the need for this in the commercial districts. So ultimately, due to the amount of available RA land that this use could go on, the committee didn't see the need to allow a conditional use permit in the B2, B3 districts. So they did recommend against this request. So tonight we are seeking your comments to forward to the Board of Supervisors, and I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Moan.
I don't have a question necessarily, other than just to say that I agree with the committee's recommendation. I don't think this is something that, even as a conditional use, we'd necessarily want to allow in our commercial areas. And for me, it's more to preserve the intended quality of our commercial areas, hopefully, and preserve a successful environment for those established uses and for those that want to come in. And I'm just not sure that a flea market would do that. So I'm not a big fan of this proposal.
Madam Chair, I strongly agree also. You know, business commercial inventory is fairly limited. This would consume that, and it's not like there's not plenty of other opportunities for flea markets in the RA, so I just can't cozy up to this either.
Any other comments? Yes. Mr. Oates?
I do remember committee, there was one thing we had suggested is trying to compromise, which was maybe allow, since it's allowed in B2, indoor flea markets in B3. But again, I have no opinion on that one way or the other, but I just remember that was also discussed.
Hey, Mr. Thomas.
I agree with all the comments. I also agree with Mr. Oates that if we're going to allow this in a commercial area or B2 or B3, I think the only way we should allow it's inside, so that they have at least some controlling impact on the surrounding businesses, because we don't want to lose a business in an area because there's a flea market there and they're bringing in things that are not compatible with the business environment and causing problems. So I think we really ought to send at least, I don't know if we have to do a motion, but send a sense of the Planning Commission to the board that we disagree with this in an open term.
Anything else?
Just ditto with what was just said and what was brought up. We did discuss it kind of lengthy, and probably still have to pave the parking lots and things, but if it was indoors, I don't think I'd have a problem with it if it was, under cover to where it would look like a normal setting right there or something. I think it would probably be okay. But just to put a flea market in a commercial area like that, I think would be a problem to Frederick County down the road.
Any other comments?
I think it's all been said.
Okey doke. Well, it's all been said. Thank you so much, Mrs. Perkins, for that. I think we're at the end of our agenda, and in fact, we are at the end of our agenda. Both of these items that we just discussed will be going to the board also on the 27th. And as we all know, that our next meeting is the 20th, and it is our Planning Commission retreat, and it will be held right here.
Is it starting at 6 instead of 7?
20.
I believe it starts at 6.
6. Yeah.
Not 7.
Sorry. Everybody okay with that?
Just email me, I'll forget that.
So when is it?
Okey doke. I think if somebody will adjourn us, that might be.
For adjournment.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Gonna need
Thank
that
you,
now.
thank you very much.